Good morning, everybody. This is Steve Butler. I I took a nap last night. I don't know, woke up early in the morning. I was online doing my zodiac thing, and I found out that I am a blessed child of God. That a miracle had actually befallen me, something I could have never, ever in 1,000 years have wished to have happened more to a nicer guy than myself. Right? I went online and found a post from 2017 about the Zodiac confession letter. And when I was reading the post about the Zodiac confession letter, I was absolutely floored. I said, "You're talking about Cherry Joe Bates, the confession letter, the letter under the table, the she had to die letters, and you agree with me?" I was like, looking around the room and I was thinking, you gotta be kidding me. I was just touching to see if I was in heaven. Right? It was talking about the envelopes. The envelopes that those letters came into, right? And was talking about the handwriting and how unique it was, right? And how all of this couldn't be a coincidence, right? And this is a guy from 2017, right? It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm not the only one at 3 o'clock in the morning talking about the Zodiac. I had to check it out. So I went there, right? Clicked on the link. See, it's a Zodiac discussion forum, right? Talking about the confession letter. And there was this dude, Anonymous, right? And he goes, Inside Detective Magazine was published in January 1969, 1.5 years before the Little List letter, where he wrote virtually identical phrases. He simply could have read this magazine. Whether the confession letter was connected later by police is irrelevant. Zodiac could still have read it as early as January 1969. The two crimes were discussed as possibly having connections as early as October 20th, 1969. That's the argument so many Zodiac investigators make. Anonymous, a notable member, a smart guy about Zodiac. He's saying this is a coincidence. Guess who checked it? Right? I know I'm God's child. Because I fell out of my chair as I scroll up. I am not Avery. Paul Avery. I was like, what? August 11th, 2017 at 8:09 p.m. My main man woke up and said, BS. He called Blue Shot. That's my man Dr. Decker from Reddit. Right? The guy who runs the Zodiac subreddit for since 2007 till now. That's this is 2025. That's a lot of years. So 7, 14 is 10, 24 is 2. That's 22 years. He's been on the Zodiac case for 22 years. I've only been investigating for 3 years. People call me crazy. They say I need to touch some grass. I need to get out and get some air, right? I need to find something else to do, get a hobby, right? Don't you have a life? This is my man who's been on this case for 22 years online. And he told this guy who says that what the Zodiac did in the Little List letter that resembles what happened in the Cherry Joe Bates letters was a coincidence, that he needs to find something else to do with his life. And as good old Dr. Necker, I am not Paul Avery, does so eloquently, is he writes what you wrote before he responds. So he goes on to write again. Inside Detective Magazine was published in January 1969, 1.5 years before the Little List letter, where he wrote virtually identical phrases. He simply could have read this magazine. Whether the confession letter was connected later by police is irrelevant. Zodiac could have read it as early as January 1969. The two crimes were discussed as possibly having connections as early as October 20th, 1969. I told you that Albert Lee Terry Jr. created all, or most of all, of the Zodiac letters, and that in the Cherry Joe Bates case, I now saw his unique style of artistic writing where he interchanges characters with letters and letters with characters, and that it was unmistakably Zodiac communications because Albert Lee is unmistakably a Zodiac, found in the Z408 cipher with his home listing from a 1968 phone book as his coded insertion of his name in one of the most Zodiac famous communications of all times. Now, my main man, I am not Paul Avery, Dr. Necker, and I are on the same page. Call me crazy now. Watch Dr. Necker's response. In bold! In bold! He says again, it's not that simple. He's got his finger in this dude's face, screaming at the top of his lungs, blood bulging out of his forehead. His veins are pumping, right? To put this person in their place. And I got you back, Doc, for once in life, dude. You and me are on the exact same page, man. I got you, brother. I'm hugging you right now, right? Because I want you to know that Steve Butler, hey, I stand with you. I'll stand with you back to back on this because I know you are telling the truth. You're telling the truth right here. He says, for that to be what happened, you also have to believe the following. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the man who has run the most preeminent Zodiac subreddit on the planet Earth, the repository for discussions about the Zodiac, where all the people, all the big names, all the little people, everybody, including David Orenchak, all of them go to get their praise, pat each other on the back, and study the Zodiac endlessly, obsessively. I've only been doing this 3 years, and they treat me like I am the only person on the planet Earth that has any interest in the Zodiac. This is the man, right here, this guy. Yeah, he posted this August 11, 2017 at 8:09 p.m. in response to a dude who was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, who's also a prominent member, saying that it's a coincidence between the Little List letter and the similarities to all these other Zodiac communications. And Dr. Necker says, what is finger going? Mr. I am not Paul Avery. It's not that simple. For that to be what happened, you also have to believe Z read a specific article in Inside Detective, copied the misspellings and wording styles from the confession reproduction, somehow managed to guess the unpublished handwriting from the Bates letters and the desktop. The unpublished Bates letters and the desktop letter. People who understand the Cherry Joe Bates investigation know exactly what that is. We're talking about the letters that we've been talking about, which are Bates had to die, a confession letter, and another letter found under a desk in the library that she was at. He says, remember, you are now claiming Z copied his handwriting, style, and misspellings from Riverside. So now you get to also claim it's all a coincidence. Doc's saying, really? He said, he said, let me repeat what you said. This is what has to happen for this to be true. That the Little List letter, which must mimic all these things, right? with identical phrases simply could have been from Zodiac reading an article in some detective magazine as early as January 1969. And the man, the most preeminent individual in the Zodiac universe on the planet Earth that is not in law enforcement. I am not Paul Avery, Dr. Necker. Chastises this fool at 8 a.m. in the morning in 2017. It says, again, it's not that simple. For that to be what happened, you also have to believe the following. Z read a very specific article in Inside Detective, copied the misspellings and wording styles from the confession reproduction, somehow managed to guess the unpublished handwriting from the Bates letters and desktop, fooled, which means fooled the state handwriting expert with his forged Riverside handwriting, who must have also noticed the similarities. Remembering you are now claiming Z copied his handwriting, his style, and misspellings from Riverside. He's saying, remember, this is what you're saying. From an article in a magazine. You are now also claiming it's all a coincidence? And then Dr. Necker decides to put this guy in his place, to check this fool. In his calmest voice, typing on his computer, and he stars each one, right, to make sure you don't miss a thing he's about to say, because he's about to push the button, and this guy's going down the commode, right? Because he's about to light him up. He says Z also used, he meant to say used, double posters like many of the Riverside envelopes. Z used a felt tip marker like the confession envelope, which I didn't know, like God knows. Z managed to have the Riverside case linked to the Z crimes without any effort on his part to promote the connection, and happened to take credit for the crime that was, like his crimes, never solved to this day. Now tell me how all that is possible. So Doc is saying, all this stuff that's not published. Some guy read an article in a magazine and he was able to duplicate that years later, identically. Fool state handwriting experts and do everything that the Zodiac did in the Riverside case. If you believe the Zodiac case from 68, 69 and on were related back to Cherry Joe Bates's murder communications, which I do. Doc is saying, how on the earth is any of that probable? He's like, again, the guy used the double postage stamps in this later communication, just like in the Riverside envelopes. He used the felt tip marker like the confession envelope. That's an inside move. Who knew that? That it was a felt tip marker. Doc, you are the man, dude. You are the man. Z managed to have the Riverside case linked to the Z crimes without any effort on his part to promote the connection. So Doc is suggesting that this guy did this on purpose. He wanted to connect these crimes. He wanted credit for Riverside. So he used some of the exact same phrases, some of the exact same techniques. And happened to take credit for a crime that, like his, was never solved to this day. Now tell me how that's even probable. Dr. Necker, it isn't a coincidence. Like Anonymous says. Again, it's not that simple. For that to happen, you would have to believe Z read a very specific article in Inside Detective, copied the misspellings, which are codes, and wording styles from the confession reproductions. It means this guy had to learn some really intricate stuff from some very bad reproductions. Somehow managed to guess the unpublished handwriting from the Bates letters and desktops. guess. He says he had to guess what the unpublished handwriting styles were from the letters and the desktop. Right? Fool a state handwriting expert and copied his handwriting style and misspellings from Riverside. And then you get to claim it's all a coincidence. And then Doc lights him up and goes to the meat. Z also used double postage like many of the Riverside envelopes. And he used a felt tip marker like the confession envelope. He starts talking about the envelopes. Nobody in this case really talks about the envelopes. They only talked about the letters. I want to kiss this man. I'm not Avery. Because you can't, and nobody calls him crazy. Nobody says he needs to go outside and get some air. Nobody says that he's obsessed with the case and should find something else to do. And he just told the truth about the Zodiac, and I'm going to show you exactly what he's talking about. You see this right here? This is the envelope from the Bates had to die letter that went to the father of Cherry Joe Bates. There's the double stamp over the postage meter mark, which is faked. So this letter was hand delivered, and he said these were unpublished when the little list letter came out. Look at Riverside. See that girl right there? I know who she is. That R is a female. Her initials are EDS. She's alive. I can't say who her name is, right? This is Albert Lee Terry Jr.'s work. This is the writing style that Doc is talking about that can't be faked. That means that the Zodiac would have to have been, if these are not connected, able to do that. Now, I don't know how Doc knows that this is what actually he meant by that unique writing style on the envelopes. Look at that lady right there. But he is 1,000% correct when he put that dude in his place. Because this writing with the black felt pen on the letter that went to Cherry Joe's father after her murder on the 6-month anniversary of her death, with this little Klingon ship right here representing the USS Enterprise CVN 65 at NAS Alameda, where this young lady was, I think, an assistant to a photographer's mate who was one of the main people in the Zodiac running everything. Is Albert Lee Terry Jr.'s work. A man who faked his death in 1971. And it is unmistakable. And my man, Doc Denecker, he laid it out. How is that a coincidence? How is that even probable that some dude read a magazine and can fake Albert Lee Terry Jr.'s work? Albert Lee Terry Jr. would be pissed if he thought somebody was getting credit for what he did. I'm out.